Hey everyone. So today we'll be talking about data lake storage. So whenever we transfer our data, let's say from OLTP to OLAP systems, we talked about ELT or ETL pipelines. So it's a common practice that we need to use data lake first of all as a storage. Let's say the data is coming from on premises. Before we transform the data, before we put it inside a data warehouse, it is a common practice that you put your data as it is. That means the raw data inside this something called as data lake storage, which is Azure data lake storage, right? So Azure data lake storage is actually can hold large amount of data, whether it is structured, semi-structured or unstructured. So structured means relational tables, semi-structured means like the JSON files, unstructured means the audio or the video files. So whenever it's a common practice that you should put your data that is coming from, let's say, an on-premises system, put it inside the data lake storage. After that you can use the transformation logics and all. That is a common practice we do. Now when we talk about Azure Data Factory, this is actually a tool we'll be leveraging for our ETL or ELT projects. That means we want to transform our data, extract the data. We'll be using this particular service called as Azure Data Factory. So it's a managed cloud service, right? Now, let's say we have a requirement that we need to transfer our data from on-premises file share to Azure data lake storage. So because I told you, you cannot put your data directly inside the data warehouse. You first of all need an Azure cloud storage. So let's say we want our data to be there on the Azure data lake storage. So what we do in Azure Data Factory, this is how the interface of Azure Data Factory looks like. So we have something called as a canvas over here. So we drag and drop this activity. Let's say the activity I'm using called as copy data. So we'll be talking about activities and all. It's just that I'm giving you an overview what exactly a data factory can do. So let's say I'm using an activity. Activity is nothing but a task to copy the data from on-premises file share to Azure Data Lake. So over here you can see there are two settings are there: source and sink. Source is nothing but the from where the data is coming, and sink is nothing but the where exactly the data will go. That is a destination. These are the two settings you need to provide. But when it comes to Azure Data Factory, you need to understand three important components. Now, what are those? Now, let's say first component is integration runtime. Integration runtime is the compute infrastructure used by Azure Data Factory to provide data integration capabilities and all. Let's understand it. Now, in our case, in the previous example we discussed, our data is there in on-premises, right? So we will be using a self-hosted agent that will be installed on our on-premises machine. That's why the compute infrastructure would be our local machine or on-premises machine. That will help us to transfer our data in the cloud data store. So when you will be using the self-hosted integration runtime, whenever you want to transfer the data from a private network to the cloud data stores. Like in our example, we'll be using a self-hosted agent. But there are some other types of integration runtime as well. It is there. What is that? Now, the next one is this is how it is done, first of all. So, what do? You create an integration runtime. You go to the self-hosted runtime over here, as you can see in on-premises or private network, and then you can click on continue. This is how you will create an integration runtime in your Azure environment first. All right. Now, also there is another integration runtime is Azure integration runtime. When you want to move the data between cloud stores, let's say you have a data, let's say in S3 bucket is there in AWS, or you want to transfer it to the Azure data lake storage, right? There way we can use easily the Azure integration runtime. That is between the cloud data stores itself. Then we'll be using Azure integration runtime. So one thing we talked about, one of the component is your integration runtime. What is the second one? Link service. Link service are just like the connections. As you can see over here, we provide the username, the password, right? They are just like the connection strings which define the connection information. As we know that authentication is important, right? If we want to connect to our source or the destination, we need those connections, right? So link service defines those connections, those authentications, right? That is the nothing but the link service you need to create. Now the third one is your data set. Data set is actually nothing but the referencing the data in your activity. Let's say over here, from my on premises, I want to transfer some of the CSV files. So this is actually the data I'll be using it over here. So I need to provide the link service, and over here, as you can see, the data that I want to copy is C drive folder 1. So I'll be using link service so that I can be authenticated, and I'll be using this data set. This is nothing but the reference to my data. Okay, so three things we talked about. One is your integration runtime. We talked about data set as well. That is nothing but the reference that will basically reference your data. And last, we talked about the link service, which is nothing but the connections to our data stores, right? So I hope this part is clear, guys. Thank you, everyone.